in the heart of the Wild West, where tumbleweeds rolled across desolate plains and the sun scorched the earth with relentless fury, there was a small, unassuming ranch nestled between two vast mountain ranges. The land stretched endlessly in every direction, dotted with cacti and sagebrush that swayed gently under the hot wind. It was here, in this barren wasteland, that a peculiar boy lived among chickens. His name was Elias. He was no older than 10 years, yet his eyes carried an age far beyond his years. They were deep pools of mystery, reflecting both wisdom and sorrow. His clothes were tattered and patched, but they fit him well enough for the harsh life he led. Around his neck hung a small pendant, its purpose unknown even to those who had seen it up close. Some said it glowed faintly at night. Others dismissed such tales as mere superstition. Elias lived alone on the ranch, save a flock of chickens that roamed freely around the property. There was no sign of any family, no mother or father to guide him through life's trials. The only companionship he knew came from these feathered creatures. They followed him everywhere, clucking softly as if conversing in their own secret language. To outsiders, it seemed strange, almost unnatural, how closely bonded the boy was with his birds. But little did they know, there was more to Elias than met the eye. The ranch itself stood as a testament to survival against all odds. A weathered wooden fence surrounded the perimeter, though parts of it leaned precariously due to neglect. Inside, a modest house bore the scars of time, faded paint peeled away by the elements, shutters hanging crookedly, and windows cracked from countless storms. Beyond the house lay fields of dry dirt, barely suitable for growing crops. Yet somehow, Elias managed to eke out a living here, tending to his chickens and scavenging what little food the land could provide. Each morning began the same way. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting long shadows over the desert landscape, Elias would rise from his bed, a simple cot tucked into a corner of the house, and step outside. The air was crisp, carrying with the scent of dust and distant mesquite trees. He would call to his chickens, his voice soft and melodic, unlike the gruff tones one might expect from someone raised in such rugged surroundings. And without fail, the flock would gather around him, pecking at the ground as he scattered grain. But it wasn't just a routine that made people curious about Elias. It was something else entirely, something hidden beneath the surface, buried deep within the mysteries of the ranch. For while most children his age dreamed of adventure, of riding horses and exploring untamed wilderness, Elias spent his days whispering to himself in a language none could understand. Latin. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. At first, villagers passing by the ranch thought they heard murmurs carried by the wind, soft chants that echoed faintly before fading into silence. Then came the sightings. Travelers reported seeing Elias standing atop a hill overlooking the ranch, arms outstretched toward the sky, speaking words that sounded ancient and foreign. His voice carried authority, as though commanding forces unseen by mortal eyes. Those who dared approach always retreated quickly, unnerved by the intensity in his gaze. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a stranger arrived at the ranch. Dressed in a dark coat frayed at the edges, he dismounted his horse and tied it to the sagging fence post. His boots kicked up clouds of dust as he walked cautiously toward the house. The chickens scattered, sensing unfamiliar presence, but Elias remained calm, watching the man with quiet curiosity. "Who are you?" the stranger asked, his voice gravelly from years of smoking cheap cigars. "I'm Elias," the boy replied, his tone steady despite his young age. "And you?" "My name is Marcus," the man said, tipping his hat slightly. "I've come looking for answers." Answers? What kind of answers would a wandering stranger seek from a child living amongst chickens? Yet Elias didn't question further. Instead, he invited Marcus inside, where the dim light of a kerosene lamp illuminated the sparse furnishings. The room smelled faintly of wood smoke and hay, remnants of previous nights when fires had been lit to ward off the chill. Marcus sat down heavily on a chair, running a hand through his grizzled beard. "People talk about you, boy," he began. "They say strange things happen around here, that you speak in tongues, command powers beyond comprehension." Elias tilted his head, studying the man carefully. "And do you believe them?" "I don't know what to believe," Marcus admitted. but I want to find out. Tell me, why do you whisper in Latin? For a moment, the boy hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached for the pendant around his neck, pulling it free so Marcus could see it clearly. It was shaped like a cross, but not ordinary. It shimmered faintly, as though infused with some otherworldly energy. This belonged to my father, Elias explained, his voice tinged with sadness. He taught me the words, said they held great power. And what power is that? Marcus pressed, leaning forward eagerly. Elias looked away, staring out the window at the starry expanse above. Until now, I haven't told anyone. Not because I feared disbelief, but because I feared understanding. You see, the words aren't just sounds. They're keys. Keys to unlocking truths buried beneath our world. Marcus frowned, confusion clouding his features. Truths? Like what? The boy sighed deeply, as though bearing the weight of centuries on his shoulders. Like who we really are, where we came from. Why the land feels alive sometimes, as though it breathes alongside us. Before Marcus could respond, a sudden gust of wind swept to the open window, extinguishing the lamp and plunging the room into darkness. Outside, the chickens squawked wildly, disturbed by the disturbance. Both men froze, listening intently as the sound of footsteps approached, the deliberate crunch of boots against gravel. "Who's there?" Marcus called out, reaching instinctively for the revolver holstered at his side. No answer came, only the continued rhythm of footsteps growing closer. Suddenly, the door burst open, revealing a figure cloaked entirely in black. Their face was obscured by shadow, but their presence radiated menace. "Refused," the figure intoned, their voice low and resonant. "The secrets must remain buried." Elias stepped forward bravely, his small frame contrasting sharply with the imposing silhouette before him. "You cannot stop me," he declared firmly. "Not anymore. The time has come to reveal the truth." A tense standoff ensued, filled with unspoken tension and latent danger. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the scene briefly before retreating once more into darkness. Marcus watched helplessly, unsure whether to intervene or retreat. Meanwhile, the chickens gathered protectively around Elias, forming a circle as though shielding him from harm. But then, something extraordinary happened. With a single motion, Elias lifted the pendant high above his head, reciting a string of Latin phrases that reverberated through the air like thunder. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the sky erupted in streaks of brilliant light. The cloaked figure staggered back, visibly weakened by the force emanating from a boy. "You underestimate the bond one shared with this place," Elias continued, his voice rising above the chaos. "These lands hold memories of their own, stories written in stone and soil, and I am their keeper." As the final syllable left his lips, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The storm subsided, replaced by an eerie calm. The cloaked figure dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only a faint trace of ash scattered by the breeze. In the distance, the first hints of dawn broke over the horizon, signaling the end of the confrontation. When Marcus finally spoke, his voice was thick with awe. "Unbelievable," he muttered. "Absolutely unbelievable." Elias smiled faintly, lowering the pendant back to his chest. "Some truths are meant to be shared," he said quietly, "even if the world isn't ready for them yet." From that day forward, the ranch became a place of legend. Visitors flocked to catch glimpses of the boy who whispered in Latin, hoping to glimpse the mysteries he guarded. Yet Elias remained unchanged, content to live among his chickens and tend to the land that had become part of him. For he knew better than anyone that some secrets, once uncovered, could never be put back again. And perhaps that was exactly how it should be. As the days turned into weeks, the whispers of Elias's abilities spread far beyond the dusty confines of his ranch. Travelers passing through the Wild West spoke in hushed tones about the boy who could command unseen forces with ancient words. Some dismissed it as mere superstition, a tall tale spun by weary wanderers seeking entertainment around campfires. Others, however, believed every word, their imaginations fueled by fragments of truth mixed with exaggeration. The ranch itself became a destination for those brave or foolish, enough to venture into its domain. Merchants traveling along the old trade routes would occasionally detour, hoping to catch a glimpse of the legendary child. Cowboys riding lonely trails through the desert paused to stare at the distant silhouette of the house perched atop its hill, wondering if the stories they'd heard were real. Even lawmen and outlaws alike found themselves drawn to the place, though for very different reasons. One such visitor was Sheriff Thomas Hale, a man known throughout the territory for his unyielding pursuit of justice. Tall and broad-shouldered, with piercing blue eyes that missed nothing, he rode into the area one sweltering afternoon, his horse lathered from the long journey. His badge gleamed dully against the sunlight, a symbol of authority in a land where chaos often reigned supreme. Thomas had heard the tales, of course. Every sheriff worth his salt kept an ear open for rumors that might lead to something bigger, a criminal hiding in plain sight, a treasure buried under layers of myth. But this, a boy with supernatural powers? It sounded preposterous, even for someone accustomed to the strangeness of frontier life. Yet here he was, spurred on by curiosity and perhaps a touch of skepticism. He tethered his horse outside the fence, taking a moment to observe the scene before him. The chickens wandered lazily across the yard, clucking softly as they pecked at scraps of food scattered carelessly on the ground. The air smelled faintly of earth and dry grass, mingling with a faint metallic tang of iron carried by the wind. Somewhere nearby, a stream babbled gently, its sound barely audible over the rustling leaves of a lone cottonwood tree standing sentinel near the house. Elias emerged from the shadows of the porch, stepping into the golden light of late afternoon. He wore the same tattered clothes as always, but today there was something different about him, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. His gaze locked onto Sheriff's, unwavering despite the disparity in size and experience between them. "Who are you?" Elias asked, his voice carrying clearly despite the distance separating them. "I'm Sheriff Thomas Hale," the man replied, tipping his hat respectfully, "and I've come to ask some questions." "About what?" the boy countered, folding his arms across his chest. "About you," Thomas said plainly. "People talk. They say things, unusual things, things I need to investigate." Elias tilted his head slightly, considering the words carefully. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back inside, leaving the door wide open. It was an invitation, albeit a silent one, and Thomas accepted it willingly. Inside, the house felt cooler than expected, shielded from the harsh heat by thick walls and closed shutters. The kerosene lamp hung low, casting flickering shadows across the wooden floorboards. Elias gestured toward a chair, which Thomas took after brushing off a thin layer of dust with his gloved hand. "What do you want to know?" the boy asked, his tone neutral but watchful. "Start with the obvious," the sheriff suggested, leaning forward slightly. "Why do you live here alone? Where are your parents?" Elias hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of the pendant hanging around his neck. "They're gone," he said finally, "buried beneath the earth. This ranch is all I have left of them." "And Aladdin?" Thomas pressed, unwilling to let the subject drop so easily. "How did you learn it? And why do you use it?" A flash of emotion crossed the boy's face, something akin to pain, quickly masked by resolve. "My father taught me," he explained slowly. "He said it was important, that the words held power greater than anything we could imagine. At first, I didn't understand. But now—" He trailed off, looking away as though searching for the right words. "Now what?" the sheriff prodded gently. "Now I see how right he was," Elias finished, his voice barely above a whisper. "The words aren't just sounds. They're keys to places, to memories, to truths hidden deep within the world itself." Thomas frowned, processing the information. Part of him wanted to dismiss it outright, to chalk it up to the fanciful musings of a lonely child. But another part, the part that had seen too many inexplicable things during his years as a lawman, couldn't ignore the weight behind the boy's words. "What kind of truths?" he asked cautiously. Elias stood abruptly, walking to the window and staring out at the horizon. The sun dipped lower now, painting the sky in fiery hues of red and orange. "Truths about the land," he said, his voice tinged with reverence. "About the people who came before us, and the ones who will follow. About the connections we share with everything around us. Trees, rivers, animals, even the stars above. The sheriff remained silent, allowing the boy to continue. There are forces at work in this world, Elias went on, turning back to face him. Forces older than any of us. My father called them the guardians. They watch over the balance between light and darkness, ensuring neither side grows too strong. And when that balance is threatened, they act. And you can speak to these guardians? Thomas ventured, his disbelief warring with his growing fascination. Not directly, Elias admitted, but the words, they resonate. They call attention to what needs fixing. Sometimes they bring answers. Other times, they only raise more questions. The room fell silent once more, save for the occasional creak of the floorboards as both men shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Outside, the wind picked up, sending tumbleweeds rolling across the yard and stirring the feathers of the curious chickens gathered near the porch. You realize, the sheriff began after a pause, that if even half of what you say is true, it changes everything we think we know about this place. I realize, Elias confirmed solemnly. That's why I haven't told anyone until now, because not everyone is ready to hear it. Thomas nodded slowly, absorbing the implications. For a man dedicated to enforcing laws and maintaining order, the idea of such vast, unknowable powers existing outside human control was unsettling. Yet at the same time, it filled him with a strange sense of wonder, a reminder that the world was far larger and more complex than he'd ever dared to imagine. As the night deepened, the two continued their conversation, delving deeper into topics neither fully understood nor entirely trusted. By the time dawn broke, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and lavender, both men had changed irrevocably. The sheriff left the ranch with a renewed sense of purpose, vowing to protect the secrets Elias guarded, while also seeking to uncover more about the mysterious forces tied to the land. And Elias? He returned to his daily routine, caring for his chickens and tending to fields, knowing full well that his life and the lives of those around him would never be the same again. Little did they know, however, that the greatest challenge still lay ahead, a challenge that would test not only their courage, but also their faith in the unseen bonds connecting them all. The weeks that followed were anything but ordinary. Word of Sheriff Thomas Hale's visit spread like wildfire through the dusty towns and sprawling ranches of the Wild West. Some dismissed it as another tall tale, a story spun to entertain weary travelers around campfires. Others, however, began to take notice, especially those who had heard whispers of strange occurrences in the region. It started with small things: cattle refusing to graze near certain areas, horses spooking at unseen forces, and crops wilting despite abundant rainfall. Ranchers muttered about curses laid upon their lands, while superstitious townsfolk blamed Elias for these misfortunes, believing his connection to ancient powers brought ill omens. Tensions rose, and soon suspicion hung heavy in the air like an approaching storm. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the parched earth, a group of men rode toward Elias's ranch. Their faces were grim, their intentions clear. They weren't there to seek answers or understanding. They came to demand explanations and, if necessary, force compliance. Leading them was John McAllister, a wealthy landowner whose pride rivaled his greed. He'd lost several prize steers recently, their carcasses found mysteriously drained of blood, and he blamed the boy on the hill. Elias sensed their approach long before they reached the fence. The chickens grew restless, clucking nervously as they huddled together near the house. Standing at the edge of the porch, the boy watched silently as the riders drew closer, dust swirling around their boots and hooves. His heart quickened, not out of fear, but from anticipation. He knew this moment would come eventually, the reckoning between those who feared change and those who embraced it. "Boy," McAllister bellowed, reining in his horse just short of the fence. "We've had enough of your tricks. Whatever you're doing to our land stops now." Elias descended the steps slowly, his movements deliberate and measured. "I'm not doing anything," he replied calmly, though his voice carried authority far beyond his years. "If anything, I'm trying to protect what little balance remains." "Protect?" McAllister sneered, dismounting with a thud. "From what?" "Yourself." The other men shifted uneasily, unsure whether to laugh at the absurdity of the accusation or remain wary of the boy's rumored abilities? Elias ignored their murmurs, focusing instead on the man standing before him. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "This isn't about me. It's about the land and the guardians who watch over it. Something is waking up, stirring beneath the surface. And unless we listen, it will consume everything." McAllister laughed harshly, waving off the warning as nonsense. "Guardians? Waking up? You sound crazier than the stories make you out to be." Behind him, some of the men exchanged uneasy glances. Tales of mysterious phenomena had reached even their ears, and deep down, none of them wanted to test the limits of such forces. Yet fear of ridicule kept them silent, allowing McAllister to continue his tirade unchecked. "What do you propose we do then?" Elias asked, his tone steady despite the tension crackling in the air. "Shall we ignore the signs until it's too late? Or shall we work together to restore harmony?" "To restore harmony?" McAllister echoed, sarcasm dripping from every word. "By bowing to your so-called guardians? No, thank you. We'll handle our problems ourselves." With that, he turned back to his horse, signaling for the others to follow suit. But as they prepared to leave, a low rumble echoed through the ground, vibrating beneath their feet. Horses reared nervously, neighing loudly as the tremors intensified. Dust filled the air, obscuring vision and adding to the growing chaos. "What's happening?" one of the men cried, panic evident in his voice. Elias raised his hands, palms facing outward, as though attempting to calm the invisible force responsible for the disturbance. "It's here," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "The awakening has begun." Before anyone could react further, a blinding light erupted from the center of the ranch, illuminating the night sky with an intensity rivaling the midday sun. Shadows danced wildly across the landscape as the chickens scattered in terror, their cries mixing with the terrified shouts of the riders. From the heart of the light emerged a figure, not human, yet possessing a presence that demanded respect. Its form shimmered like heat rising from asphalt, shifting constantly between shapes impossible to define. The balance must be restored, the entity intoned, its voice resonating deep within the chests of all present, or destruction will follow. McAllister froze, his bravado crumbling under the weight of reality. For once, words failed him, leaving only stunned silence in their place. Around him, his companions shared similar expressions of awe and dread, realizing too late the folly of their actions. "I tried to warn you," Elias said softly, lowering his hands as the light began to dim. "But you refused to listen." The entity regarded the assembled group with an unfathomable gaze, then turned its attention to the boy. "You carry the burden well, young one," it stated approvingly. "But remember, the path ahead will not be easy. Many will resist, many will falter. Only by staying true to your purpose can you hope to succeed." With that, the figure dissolved into nothingness, leaving behind only a faint trace of warmth lingering in the air. The tremors ceased, the light faded, and once again the world returned to its usual state, or so it seemed. As the shaken riders mounted their horses and fled the ranch without another word, Elias stood alone amidst the aftermath, staring thoughtfully at the horizon. He knew this was merely the beginning, the first chapter in a story destined to reshape the very fabric of existence. And though uncertainty loomed large, he faced it head-on, ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, however, the chickens needed tending, and the fields required attention. Tomorrow would bring new trials. But tonight, Elias allowed himself a rare moment of peace, surrounded by the simple comforts of home. Little did he know, though, that somewhere far away, another force stirred, a rival guardian perhaps, or something even darker. Whatever it was, it watched, waited, and plotted its move against the fragile balance maintained by the boy who whispered in Latin. The days that followed the awakening brought an uneasy calm to the ranch. The chickens, once restless and skittish, returned to their usual routines, pecking at the ground with renewed vigor. Elias, however, remained vigilant, his senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the world around him. He could feel it, the land whispering secrets just beneath the surface, a constant reminder of the forces at play. Sheriff Thomas Hale visited again, this time not as a skeptic, but as an ally, Their conversations grew deeper, delving into topics neither fully understood nor entirely trusted. The sheriff spoke of strange occurrences reported across the territories. Crops wilting overnight, rivers changing course without warning, and animals behaving in ways that defied explanation. Each tale added another piece of the puzzle Elias was slowly assembling. "You're right," Thomas admitted one evening, sitting on the porch as twilight painted the sky in hues of orange and purple. "There's more going on here than anyone realizes. And I think it's connected to what you've been saying about the Guardians." Elias nodded, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "It's spreading," he said quietly. "Whatever woke up isn't confined to this area anymore. It's reaching out, testing boundaries, seeking balance, or perhaps something else entirely." "Something else?" the sheriff echoed, leaning forward intently. "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure yet," Elias confessed, "but I've noticed patterns in the disturbances. They aren't random. There's purpose behind them, even if we don't understand it yet." Their discussion was interrupted by the sudden arrival of a stranger, a woman riding hard and fast, her horse lathered from the long journey. She dismounted with practiced ease, tying the reins to the fence post before approaching the house. Her dark hair was streaked with gray, her face lined with years of hardship, yet her eyes burned with determination. "Is this where the boy lives?" she demanded, her voice carrying authority, despite its softness. "Yes," Elias replied, stepping forward cautiously. "Who are you?" "My name is Mariana," she answered, tipping her hat slightly. "And I've come looking for answers only you can provide." Thomas stood, placing himself between the woman and the boy instinctively. "Answers about what?" he asked warily. "About the awakening," Mariana explained, her gaze locking onto Elias's. "I've seen it too. Felt its presence growing stronger with each passing day. But unlike others, I believe it can be controlled, if we act quickly." Elias tilted his head, studying her carefully. There was something familiar about her, though he couldn't place it immediately. "Controlled how?" he asked finally. "By channeling its power," she replied, her tone urgent. "You have the gift, boy, the ability to speak the ancient words, to connect with the Guardians. If anyone can guide this force back into balance, it's you." "But why me?" Elias countered, his voice tinged with doubt. "Why not someone older, wiser, someone who understands the stakes better than I do?" "Because you were chosen," Mariana said simply, "chosen by the land itself. Your father knew this when he taught you the Latin phrases. He prepared you for this moment, whether you realize it or not." The revelation struck Elias like a physical blow, leaving him reeling. Chosen? Prepared? How could that be possible when so much of his life felt uncertain and unplanned? Thomas stepped in then, addressing Mariana directly. "Even if what you say is true, and I'm still working on believing that, it doesn't change the fact that Elias is just a boy. Asking him to shoulder such responsibility is unfair, maybe even cruel." Mariana sighed, lowering her gaze briefly before meeting the sheriff's again. "I understand your concerns," she admitted. "Believe me, I share them. But sometimes, fairness isn't part of the equation. Sometimes, the burden falls where it must, regardless of age or experience." Her words hung heavy in the air, sparking a mix of emotions within both men. For Elias, they ignited a spark of defiance mixed with fear. He didn't want this role, didn't ask for it, but denying it seemed equally impossible. As for Thomas, he wrestled with conflicting desires, protecting the boy versus respecting his potential destiny. That night, under a sky scattered with countless stars, the three gathered inside the house, poring over maps and notes scrawled hastily during previous discussions. Mariana revealed knowledge passed down through generations of her family. Knowledge of rituals, symbols, and places sacred to the Guardians. Together, they pieced together a plan, fragile and incomplete, yet hopeful enough to warrant action. "The first step," Mariana explained, pointing to a location marked on the map, "is finding the nexus point, a place where the connection between the physical world and the Guardian realm is strongest. Once there, we can attempt communication, perhaps even negotiation. And if it doesn't work?" Thomas asked, his brow furrowed with worry. "Then we adapt," Mariana replied firmly. Just like always, as dawn broke, painting the horizon in soft shades of pink and gold, the trio set out toward the designated site. Traveling by horseback, they crossed vast stretches of desert, winding through narrow canyons and crossing babbling streams. Along the way, Elias noticed changes in the landscape. Plants blooming in areas previously barren, rocks arranged in patterns resembling ancient runes, and animals moving with a grace that bordered on supernatural. When they finally reached the nexus point, a secluded grove surrounded by towering mesas, they found themselves standing before an altar carved into the living stone. Symbols etched into its surface glowed faintly, pulsating in rhythm with the heartbeat of the earth itself. Here, surrounded by evidence of the Guardian's existence, Elias steeled himself for what lay ahead. With Mariana guiding him and Thomas watching protectively from the sidelines, the boy raised a pendant around his neck, reciting the Latin phrases taught to him by his father. His voice resonated through the grove, calling forth a response far greater than anticipated. From the shadows emerged figures, not human, yet possessing intelligence and purpose. Guardians, come to answer the summons. "What would you have of us?" one of them intoned, its form shifting constantly between shapes impossible to define. Elias took a deep breath, steadying his nerves. "We seek understanding," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Understanding of your needs, your desires, and how we might restore the balance disrupted by recent events." The Guardian regarded him silently for a moment, then spoke. "Balance cannot be restored until trust is rebuilt. Between worlds, between beings. Are you prepared to offer such trust?" "I am," Elias replied resolutely, "if you are willing to meet me halfway." A tense silence fell over the grove as the Guardian considered the proposal. Then, unexpectedly, it bowed its head in acknowledgement. "So be it," it said finally. "Together, we shall forge a new path, one that honors both realms." Relief washed over Elias as the tension eased, replaced by cautious optimism. Though challenges undoubtedly awaited, he now faced them with allies at his side and hope burning brightly within his heart. Little did they know, however, that somewhere beyond the reaches of the Wild West, darker forces stirred, forces determined to disrupt the fragile alliance forged that day, forces that would test not only their resolve but also their very souls.